What if I wanted to create a new directory? Then I have to use a command called mkdir. What if I wanted to delete that? Then we have a remove directory, rmdir. If you wanted to change the location of a file and directory from one location to another location, then we are going to use a command called mv. Whatever the different management we have in our operating system will going to be controlled and coordinated by this kernel or a central system of this operating system. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. Welcome back to the session 2 of chapter 2 in the unit 2 of BCA's first semester, subject called Fundamentals of Computers. I'm Rohini TS, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in our today's session, we're going to learn about the Unix operating system. Before that, we'll just have a quick recap of our previous session. So as you all know that, in the first session of this second chapter of unit 2, we had a discussion regarding what you mean by an operating system. You got to know what you mean by an operating system, and also we had a discussion regarding functions of operating system or OS. It is going to manage the device, also manages the file, and also manages the memory. So all kind of management of resources will going to be takes place with the help of this OS or operating system. And also we got to know different types of operating system. So we have a single user, multi-user, multiple tasking, and also we have a real-time operating system, batch operating system, distributed operating system. Those are all the different types of operating system which we studied in our yesterday's class, right? So in our today's session, we're going to learn what do you mean by Unix, what this Unix operating system is all about, and also you are going to learn what are the basic commands we have in a Unix, how each basic command works. Along with that, I am going to work with respect to this microkernel operating system. You get to know what is kernel and what is microkernel, what is its advantage, disadvantages and all. Along with that, at last we'll see what do you mean by booting in operating system, and do we have a types in it? If so, then what are the types of booting? That is what I will be discussing in my today's session. First, we'll see what you mean by an Unix. As I told earlier, together what we are saying, Unix operating system. If it is an operating system, then it needs to act as an interface between the user and the components of a computer. In the same way, here is also you can see an Unix is an operating system. It's a set of program. It is a set of programs that acts as a link between the computer and the user. Here also it's an establishing a relationship between the user and the computer, and a computer program that allocates the system resources and coordinates all the details of the computer's internals is called as what? Operating system or the kernel. You know the definition of kernel or operating system. What it is? It is acting as an interface between the user and to the computer component. It is going to have a detailed resources coordination to all other components of a computer system. And also, user will going to communicate with the kernel through a program which we calling that as a shell programming. So, we are going to use shell programming in order to communicate with the operating system, and that operating system will going to build a link between the user and the computer. And then this shell is what? The shell is a command line interpreter. It is what? Not GUI. It is not graphical user interface. It is a command line interpreter. This will going to translate the command entered by the user and converts them into a language that is understood by the kernel. So what is the language? Binary that is going to be understood by the kernel. What is the things which we are seeking for? So whatever the user is giving as a command or an input to the computer system, that is going to be read by this shell programming. Then that will going to translate that into kernel understandable form. That is the main usage of shell programming. And what do you mean by kernel? After that, Unix, who developed this Unix operating system? So it was developed in the year 1969 by the AT&T employees. They include Ken Thompson, we have a Dennis Ritchie. So they all invented at this Unix operating system at the Bell Laboratories or Bell Labs. And also we have a different versions of Unix operating system. In that it include Solaris Unix, and also we have a AIX, HP Unix, and also we have a BST. So all these are example which comes under Unix operating system. So most commonly we have this Linux. So Linux is one of the variant of a Unix. This is what open source software, or which is freely available. No need to pay anything and no need to have any licensed version. So it is available freely, and we can what? We can call this Unix as multi-user operating system. Why? Because it is not only restricted or only allocated for a single person at a time. So more than one people can use this Unix computer at the same time. Then we are calling this as what? Multi-user system. Already you know what is multi-user, multiple tasking and all. So here it is multi-user, and also this is multitasking environment. It is going to provide multitasking environment. That means user can run multiple programs at the same time. Simultaneously, user can run more than one programs at the same time. That is what we are calling this Unix as a multitasking environment. Fine. It is multitasking as well as multi-user. So you can write the example of Linux and Unix for the category of this multi-user and multitasking. I hope you all understood the basics of this Unix. Next we'll see what are the basic commands we have in our Unix. Under that, first we'll think about the Unix directory and managing the commands. So directory, along with that, how do we manage the commands, or why? Because this Unix is working with the shell programming. That shell we have to give a command, or we have to give an instruction in the terms of command user interface. So in order to have the directory and how to manage that commands, for that reason we have several Unix commands here. In that, first we have a cd, that is changing directory. If I wanted to change the directory from one name to another name, then we can have this cd or change directory. Then pwd. So here we are confirming the current directory, that is going to give the value of a current directory. And we have a ln, that makes links and same links to a file and directories. It is going to build the lines for files as well as directories. So what do you have to learn from this? You need to understand what is its keyword and why it is used. Only that much is enough for you. Then we have a make directory. What if I wanted to create a new directory? Then I have to use a command called mkdir. What if I wanted to delete that? Then we have a remove directory, rmdir, that is remove directories in Unix. So these are the basic command which we are going to use in the Unix directory and managing the command. We'll see the next category, that's regarding what? Text file commands. What are the different text file commands we have in a Unix? First, what I wanted to do, I wanted to create a file. Then only we can have a communication or whatever the operation that we wanted to perform, that we can do. So first here we have a cat. It is going to concatenate the file and show the contents to the standard output. So it is cat. Whenever we are using a keyword called cat, or whenever using this command called cat, at the time it is going to concatenate the file. So then it is going to give all the content whatever we have. It is going to show us what is the content we have in that file. For that reason we have this cat command. Next we have a head. So if I wanted to see the starting lines of a file, if I wanted to get to know what this file consists of, at that time we are going to use this head command. This is going to show the first 10 lines of the text file. So for example, this is 10 lines, but you can make it to any number. For example, if I am giving a parameter to head as a 5, then up to 5 lines of a file will going to be displayed, of the text file will be displayed. Same thing if I wanted to show the content from the backwards. So then if you wanted to show the last lines of a text file, then you can use this tail. Any number can be specified. Here we are specifying 10, but if I wanted to display only 20 lines of from the backwards, then you can use tail, and the parameter should be, the value should be 20. At that time, last 20 lines from the backward will going to be displayed. So these are the commands which we have, which comes under this text file command. What we have next, that is all commands for Unix file operation. So we have created a file, we have displayed a file. Next, what and all operation can be performed under the file operation? We'll see ls. This is going to list the files and directories. So if you are using a command ls, then that will going to shows you what are the different files we have along with directories. And next we have a cp. cp in the sense what? Copy. So whenever you wanted to copy the content of one file to another file, then then you can have this CP. Next, RM, that is what? Remove. If it is RMDIR, remove directory. If it is simply RM, then that is remove files or delete the file and directory which is work in progress. So here if you are simply mentioning RM, that is related to file. If you are mentioning RMDIR, then that will be related to directories. Fine. Next, we have a MV, that is move. Where we are moving, what we are moving here, that is rename or move the files and directories to another location. If you wanted to change the location of a file and directory from one location to another location, then we are going to use a command called MV. Next, what if I wanted to change the mode? So change the file or directory access permission. For example, whether it is available only for group, whether it is available for public, whether it is available only for the user. At the time, if I wanted to change the permission, public, private, or only others or a group members or only for the owners, then we can make a changes of the mode by making use of this chmod. Next, we have a chown. That means it is going to change the file or directory ownership. Who is the owner of that particular file or directory that can be changed with the help of this chown. All these commands which can be used in order to perform the file operation. What we have next, that is all regarding the commands with respect to time and date. So, if you wanted to see the current time and date, then we have to use a command called date. Next, sleep. Wait for a given number of seconds. So, if we are using sleep 10, then it will going to be slept or it is going to wait for 10 seconds of time. Then, if I wanted to check how long it has been wake up, then we have to use a command called uptime. This is going to show or it is going to find out how long the system has been up. So, up to what time or what was the time which we are using a system. Then we are going to check it out with the help of this uptime commands. Okay, fine. These are all the basic commands which we have in a Unix. Next, we'll see about the kernel. So, you know operating system. Then who is controlling and coordinating the operating system? We must have some core part, no? Then we are calling that as a kernel. So, it is a central component of an OS. It's a central component of the operating system. Then it's going to handle the system resources. As I told earlier, the resources can be hardware or software. So, time management, memory management, device, everything will going to be controlled by this kernel and also acts as a bridge between the computer's application and the hardware. So, this is going to link or it is going to build an interface between the application or operating system as well as hardware components of a computer. And also mainly it is one of the initial program that is loaded when the computer boots up. When we are switching on the computer or when we are turning on the computer, at that time this kernel get activated. And then the operator will going to be loaded. Then the kernel is the first component that loads into the memory and rests there until the operating system is shut down. Until we are going to shut down the computer system, until that this kernel will be in the active mode. Whenever we are turning on the computer, this is the first component which is going to be loaded into the computer's memory. It is going to hold the operating system. And also, it is in charge of various activities. So, why we are going to use this kernel then? It is going to manage the task and also manages the disk and also manages the memory. Whatever the different management we have in a operating system will going to be controlled and coordinated by this kernel or a central system of this operating system. So, next we'll see what is microkernel. What is microkernel based operating system? So, we got to know what is kernel right now. So, in this microkernel, it is one of the kernel's classification. Microkernel is also one of the variant of a kernel, and also being a kernel, it is going to handle all the system resources. Whatever the resources we have in a computer system, device, memory and task, every management will going to take place with the help of this kernel. And then the user and the kernel services in the microkernel are implemented in distinct address. Very, very important. if you are merging a services of kernel and user, then there will be a burden or there could be some clashes. But whenever we have this microkernel operating system, at that time, this is going to, that means it will going to hand over or it is going to handle the user and kernel services separately or in a distinct address space, so that user services are kept in a user address space. Whatever the user activities or services are there, that is going to be kept under some user address space. Along with that, it is going to have a kernel services are kept in the kernel service space. So it is going to handles the memory and handles the devices separately. There is no clash between the user service and kernel service. So that there will be what communication and interchanges of the services will be there, but it is going to be separated or it is going to have a distinct address space. Then it going to make or it going to reduce the kernel and operating system size. So when the kernel size become more, if it is holding a user services also, then the size will become high. In order to reduce all those burdens, then we have this microkernel operating system. Fine. Then here microkernel is a minimum needed of the software required to implement an operating system correctly. So why do we require then microkernel? In order to implement the performance of this operating system, we are going to have this microkernel, memory, process scheduling methods and fundamental inter-process communications are all included in this microkernel. Whatever the basic task and all we are doing, everything will going to be handles, controls and coordinates, and it is built in this microkernel. So here you can see the architecture of microkernel. Here we have a application and we have a application, inter-process communication and device drivers are there. It is taking care about the hardware devices, and also we have a Unix server and also we have a file server. With the help of all these, we can exchange the data from application to all these service provider, and also we have a basic inter-process communication and we have a virtual memory scheduling. Along with that, it is taking care about the hardware too. So there is a link between the hardware and application. So this microkernel will going to act as a link, or it is building a connection between hardware components as well as to the application. Then the communication will going to takes place, and it is also managing all these things. This is what architecture of microkernel. Then what are the benefit we can expect from this microkernel? You got to know there is a distinct address space between the user and the kernel system. That is one of the main advantage here, and also it is easy of extending the operating system. So then there is no interaction, or when we have a separate address space, then extension of that operating system will not at all going to affect on the user system. That is why it is appropriate, or this approach is very easy of extending the operating system, and all the new services are added to the user space and consequently do not require modification of the kernel. When we have a separate address space, at that time there is no clash, or if you are doing any modification, then it will not get merged or it will not get affected by each other. And also microkernel will going to provide more security. It provide a more security, and we can have a more reliability. That means we can trust. Failure level is very less in this microkernel, and since most of the services are running as user rather than kernel processors, then it is going to make this microkernel based operating system as more effective one. Fine. These are all the benefits. Though we have certain disadvantages, we'll see what are those. So mainly it is of what? When the drivers are implemented as a procedure, a context switch or a function call is needed. So in the architecture, you got to know that there we have a drivers. So when we are installing or when we are implementing that drivers at that time, so when we are implementing that as a procedure, we need to call that procedure or a methods or operation. Then that is also required here. Context switching and function call is needed when we are implementing all those device drivers. And then in a microkernel system, providing services are more costly. If it is providing all these benefits, then somehow it will be costly than the traditional monolithic operating system. And also the performance of a microkernel system somehow may be indifferent and cause some issues. So these are the different disadvantages which you can expect from this microkernel. I hope you all understood regarding the concepts of microkernel based operating system. Fine. Next, we'll see what is booting in the operating system. What are the different types we have as the last concept of your chapter 2 in the unit 2. First, you will see what do you mean by booting. So, what do you mean by booting in general? So, whenever we are loading an operating system into the computer memory to make it work, when we are turning on the computer system, at the time we are calling that process of loading or load an operating system into the computer's main memory or random access memory will be considered as what? Booting. Very important, and also it's a process of starting a computer. Whenever we are turned on the computer or switching on the computer, at that time the processor or at the time that operating system will going to be loaded to the RAM or it is loaded to the main memory of a computer. Then we calling that as a booting. So then how we are going to initialize this booting? So it can be done with the help of hardware or software command. If it is hardware, then we have to press a start button, then that computer will get started. And also after it is switched on, a CPU has no software in its main memory. So some process must load software into memory before execution. So when we are turning on the system, at the time operating system will be copied to the computer's main memory. Then we can get done the work. So now we got to know what is booting. What if I wanted to restart a system? So you got to know if we are starting a computer, that is booting. If we are restarting a computer, then we can call that as a rebooting. Fine, it can be hard rebooting or soft rebooting. So if it is hard rebooting, at the time what? We are already power is off. That means the switches are off. So when we are converting from off to on, that means whenever we are restarting a system, then that is hard booting. And if it is soft in nature, at the time power is on, that means power supply is taking place. Though I wanted to restart the system, for example, when that computer system hang out, or if you are having some updation of a software and all, at the time restart is required in between. Then we can say that as a soft booting. So both hard and soft booting, both will going to take place with the help of this hardware components or by the software commands. So totally we have two types of booting. One is warm booting and another one is cold booting. We'll see the first type, that is cold booting. So what do you mean by cold booting here? The systems are off. So we are freshly turning on the computer system. So when the computer starts for the first time or in a shutdown state and switch on the power button to start the system, then we are calling this type of process to start the computer is called cold booting. So the computers are shut down. So we are freshly starting the computer. That means we are clicking on the switch on button of a computer system. Then we are calling that kind of booting as what? Cold booting. And also during this cold booting, the system will read all the instruction from the ROM. That means read only memory, BIOS, basic input output system will be there. So that is what the reason your mobile or your computer system will not going to forget the date and time. So the date and time calendar, all the schedules are stored in this BIOS. So whenever we are turning on this or whenever having this cold booting, everything will going to be loaded automatically. And the operating system will be automatically get loaded into the operating system. And also it is going to take more time than the hard or warm booting. You got to know, right? So whenever we are doing a cold booting, at that time OS and then BIOS or ROM will going to be copied to the computer's main memory. Then it is going to take more time. Then what about this warm booting? Warm booting is also called as hard booting. In this process is when computer's system come to no response or hang state. As I told earlier, when it is in the hang state or when it is in the no response state, at that time then the system needs to be allowed to restart during on condition. It is on condition, power supply is on, it is not switched off completely, but due to all these reasons we have to restart the system. Then we can call that kind of booting as what? Warm booting. And also it is considered as what? Rebooting as well. Fine. So we have several reasons for this state, and only solution is what? Reboot the system. Sometimes your mobile get hung and also there might be no responses. At that time what we are going to do? We are just going to restart or we just reboot it. So that is the only solution in order to come out from this situation. And rebooting may be required when we install new software or hardware, and also whenever we require certain updates and all, at that time this hot booting or warm booting is also required. And here you can see that the system require a reboot to set a software or hardware configuration changes, or sometimes system may behave abnormally or may not respond properly. So all these are the different reasons in order to do the warm booting or cold booting. So in such case, the system has to be forced to restart. We have to forcefully restart the system. Then most commonly what we are going to use as a shortcut in order to do the rebooting, that is what? Control Alt and Delete. So press all these three keys together, then your system automatically will get rebooted. And also in some system the external reset button will be there, that can also be used in order to do the rebooting. Okay, so these are the two types of booting. One is warm booting and another one is cold booting. I hope you all understood my today's session. In my coming session, we'll move with a unit 3, that is last unit of your BCA's first semester, FOC or Fundamentals of Computers. There also we have a 3 chapters. In that first we have a database management system. In short, it is DBMS. You will get to know what is DBMS, what are its application, then when it will be used, how it will be used, what are the languages we can use, everything, the basic fundamentals of this DBMS you will be getting know in the coming session. Let me meet you there. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.